Well, welcome back to the One Big Thing podcast. I'm your host, Steve Campbell. Folks, this episode is going to mark 1 year of this experience with me. I couldn't be more thankful to all of you, whether you've checked out one episode, whether you've been a faithful follower from the beginning. Podcasting is not easy, especially launching a show of your own. And so I'm excited for this episode today, not only for the 1 year anniversary, but I think what's incredible about podcasting, especially when you do an interview style shows, you never know who you're going to cross paths with. And if you would have told me 1 year ago in May that I'd be meeting the gentleman I'm going to talk with today, I would have said there's absolutely no way. So I want to welcome to the One Big Thing studio, Mikey C-Roc. Mikey has become a good friend of mine by way of just meeting. I was a guest on his podcast called What Are You Made Of? And it is just an incredible show that if you're looking for another slice of inspiration, get on there and support and champion him. But Mikey is not only an influencer, he is a real person. He's a real dude, and he is all about championing other people and helping tell their stories through encouragement. So when I went on his show, we realized, man, we got a whole lot of synergy between the two of us as men. And I said, hey, it was an honor to be on your show, but would you want to come on my show? So I told him today, I said, you know, the One Big Thing, this show is all about helping those 30 to 40-year-olds that are in the thick of life, raising kids, trying to build businesses, trying to become the people that they're meant to be. And it's not always easy. So if there was anybody that was going to bring fire on this 1 year anniversary, it's Mikey. So for those that are here to champion, again, my hope is that this is not your last stop on the One Big Thing, but you'll check out some of the other incredible guests I've had. But Mikey, for those that don't know you, why don't you give people an understanding of kind of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, Steve, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate being here, man. The opportunity to speak into anyone with my history that I've had, the experiences that I've had, it's an honor. I'm just really grateful, man. And I want to express gratitude to start off. And, you know, look, I'm just a guy that's come from a broken background and have worked constantly to learn from those experiences and then pick up the pieces and then help other people get through those experiences because we all go through things. And, you know, when I was a kid, you know, I grew up, I don't remember my parents together, you know, that came from the every other weekend thing, custody battle, child support, custody battle, all that kind of stuff, step parents. Then you add other kids into the mix, half sisters, half brothers, stepsisters, step brothers, what have you. And through all that, there's a lot of chaos and confusion.
Yeah.
And, you know, I used to go to my dad's every other weekend and he would be working and I would end up at my grandparents. A lot of people go through this.
Yeah.
I know like 50% of people end up in divorce. So that means that a lot of those people have kids. And so if I can just speak to that for a second,
Yeah.
you know, when I lived with my mom for till I was 8 years old. And then my mom moved on to her third marriage and I just didn't want to live in another man's house and learn another man's rules. So I ended up going back to my mom and saying, listen, I want to go to my dad and try living at his house. And I ended up breaking her heart at 8 years old. She let me go. And I went into a house with my dad with his new wife, who I didn't really know very well. And that experience for 3 to 4 years was very abusive, challenging. A lot of things happened that, you know, there's some mental health issues and then conflict between the step parents, my mom and my stepmom, all this kind of stuff. Right. And it all poured down on the kids. And I witnessed some things that no kid should ever witness and was treated like no kid should ever be treated. And, you know, then also made to sound like I was crazy for even calling this out as a kid and gaslighted, so to speak. That's a new term, I guess, nowadays. But, and, you know, eventually I just decided to get out of there. And long story short, my dad got court papers served after 3 years of living in that house by my mom saying that she wanted to have custody back. It was my decision. And when he found out, he basically, this guy was my hero. He was a mason. Laid brick, poured concrete. I worked in that industry. That's hard work. When people, I love when people online say, takes hard work and this and that to do this. And I see this guy's a marketing expert or he's a tech expert. Like that's not hard work. Like, man, hard work is like lifting up block, pouring concrete, being in mud and hot 85-degree weather all day, breathing in like lime from mixing mud. Like that's hard work. I know what hard work is. I always laugh when I see that on social media, but my dad was like a really tough dude, well off and hard worker. And he came back to my room that day where he got those court papers delivered after I was living with his house for 3 years. And he basically said that I'm going to need this money. He crumpled up $100 bill and he threw it at me. And he said, you're going to need this when you're living on the streets with your mother one day. And I was about 10 at that time. And that moment was a pivotal catalytic moment for my life. Because when I saw that happen, or when that happened, I just couldn't believe what was going on. Really, I was just like in disbelief. But I also had this little fire lit inside of me
Hmm.
that subconsciously kicked off this thing called the rocket fuel law, which I wrote a book about. Rocket fuel converts setbacks, which all came from me saying that I'm not going to need that money. I'll show you. Right.
Right.
And I had no idea that really that was happening until about, I would say, 5 to 10 years ago. I started to realize this concept and become self aware of it
Hmm.
and be able to utilize it intentionally, which has really made things powerful. And over the last 5 years, I've accomplished more than the prior 42.
What I love about this show is that, Mikey, you and I didn't even talk about that story. Let alone if I just saw you today, which, you're no small fish. Mikey's got almost 2 million followers on Instagram. He is making some unbelievable motivational videos to help people where they're at. And I think in 2024, if you're just an outside observer and you see a page like Mikey's who's just doing it, you can feel like, well, he's always been doing it. But what you just said here at the end of, that story is that it's really the last 5 years you've done more, but it's what I love though about your story is you just probably welcome so many people in that can identify with broken families growing up, having authority figures speak things over them that no child should ever hear. You're not good enough, or you're going to be this, or you're never going to amount to anything. But I think what's cool about your story, and it's been over the last year, just a similar storyline that I've heard from people, stuff that happened to us as kids, we can't allow to influence the people that we are as men and women today. There's too much at stake. And I think what's cool is you have a choice. So if you're out there and you were dealt a bad hand growing up, if you came from a broken family or abuse, or God forbid something worse, sexual abuse, that's real stuff. But you can be leading a business, you can be an influencer, you could be on the nightly news, and yet inwardly still remember the shame, the doubt, and feel like you're never good enough. And there are so many people out there today that are crushing business as CEOs because they have this constant chip on their shoulder that they were given when they were 9, 10 years old. And so it's kind of like, how do you not allow what you experienced as a kid to unfortunately make you into what you were modeled for, before you as parental figures? And I think you've kind of broke that mold. So I just want to champion you for a second that I never knew that story about you. You never led with that story. And I think that's kind of what we experience a lot nowadays is we lead with the heart-wrenching, like, I'm Mikey C-Roc and I was, in an abused relationship as a kid. And it's like, okay, what do I do with that? You're just Mikey who's taking life, taking names, helping people. But it is that background, that experience that shaped you into who you are today. So first of all, I just appreciate you for being vulnerable enough to share that. But why don't you talk to people about what you've been able to do with those 42 years of experience over the last 5 years? What are the things that you're working on? How are you helping people? You talked about your Rocket Fuel book. Like, what is Mikey doing today with the culmination of all those experience you've learned that's empowering people through that one in the platform you have?
Yeah, we have a company called That One, and it's a brand. It can be placed on several different industries. But I was in the mortgage real estate space for 20 years.
Hmm.
I started off as a real estate agent, moved into being a loan officer, and then eventually just continued like want to build, want to build. And this is the way life is. It seems as us as human beings, we always want more.
Yep.
And I think there's the thing with this that it's okay to not want more and be satisfied with what you have. But I really truly believe if you're not going for more, not for greed, not just for money necessarily, like to have things, but going for more accomplishment, more bigger goals, bigger dreams, we don't live if we don't do
Yeah.
that.
Right.
So, I think just people get twisted. They're like, well, you never have enough. You never have more. It's like there's a difference between it's the intention. Do I want to have money just so I can hoard it, right? Or have nice stuff so I could just show it off and nobody like not impact anybody or help anybody? Or do I want more achievement to show what's possible and to inspire people? So I always wanted more. I always want to go to the next level. I always say that I want to see how far I can take this thing.
Hmm.
And I'm a firm believer. Thank God to my mom for sharing the word with me and sharing with me about Jesus. Think about this for those Christians out there and those Christians to come. I'm a firm believer in God unapologetically. And the fact of the matter is that when you're introduced to Jesus, that person that introduces you to Jesus I mean, we can't like thank them enough.
Yeah. Yep.
And because it takes a lot of gumption, a lot of courage to step out and talk about your faith and share the word with people. And my mom did that at a young age. And so I believe from my experience and from my studies in the Bible and other sources of information of people's interpretations, I truly believe we were created by an all powerful, omnipotent, omnipresent God. And he created us in his image.
Yep.
So that means when I'm looking at people, I'm looking at your face, I walk around outside. I'm, down on the boardwalk here in Ocean City. I look at people's faces. I really intentionally focus on the creator and what he's done and what he's able to do. And also looking around nature and looking at things and really realizing where like this stuff came from.
Yep.
Right. And so what that does for me is it says, okay, well, if that's the case and we're creating his image, it's my obligation to see how far I can take this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always look to build. Okay, what's next? Now I do appreciate everything. And as I accomplish things, enjoy them. But I'm always looking for the next thing because I believe that, if you're not doing that, you're not living. So
Yeah.
I went from being a loan officer, decided to open up branches with a good friend of mine. And we ended up opening 7 branches up and down the East Coast from Delaware to Miami. And, doing that, we did really well over those years. And I learned a lot. I learned how to build culture, what not to do. And we built an 8-figure company. And I wanted to go to 9 because, of course, I'm always like, okay, let's take it to the next level. Let's see what we can do. But I started to realize about 5 years ago that this is just not what I want to do the rest of my life. You see, like the mortgage industry is a commoditized industry. Everybody's always racing to the lowest rates. Like, what's the lowest rate? What's the lowest rate? What's the lowest cost? Who can pay off realtors under the table against the law and get away with it, right? And I just didn't want to be in that. It was just grimy, and I found it very difficult to differentiate myself or my team beyond a certain point from just good service, because I didn't want to be the company with the lowest rates. Like that's a race to going out of business.
Yep.
And so for me, I just decided, you know what, I got to make a change. I got to create an exit strategy. And I stayed put even after making that decision, after having the best year ever. We had a best year ever in the mortgage business right after I made that decision. And I still went forward because I realized the mission was way more important than the money. And so in doing that, I decided to get known. I figured this is the only way I can figure out something else that I can make this kind of money, because that money was like a handcuff, it trapped me. I was making such good money and having a good life with house on the water, beautiful family, taking care of everything. I was like, and I'm not extravagant by any means, but I have a good life. And I didn't know what I was going to do to make that money to support that good life still and still be able to invest and do things. And so what I came to the conclusion was I need to get known,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to get known on a big scale, and not for ego, but for impact.
Yep.
Become a celebrity in my space. And my background, Steve, really is performance. I'm a performance expert. I know how to build brands and scale businesses. And so in doing that, I just figured if I get known for doing these things, what I can do is create an attraction model versus a chase model. And
Love
see,
that.
my whole life I've been chasing back in the day, chasing women, chasing parties, stupid stuff. And then I got into sales, chasing money, chasing the next deal, chasing revenue, chasing employees. I've chase. And then from here, I was like, I don't want to chase anymore. I want to know how to chase if I need it, but I want to create an attraction model. And that's what I did. I decided to get known. And then long story short, we created a brand called That One Agency, because I ended up going on podcasts, and that's how I got known. I've been on over 1,000 podcasts in the last 5 years as a guest. And I've also, it's funny to say that, by the way, but because I remember when I first started, and I've also done over 700 episodes of my own show, the What Are You Made Of show. And it's changed my life, man.
Well, I think anytime you have those culminations of just meeting and human and seeing the best in people, the amazing thing about being a content creator, and there's so much that you just said that I got to try to unpack. Your show is available on every major podcast platform. So again, if you are somebody that needs a dose of inspiration, Mikey shows are about a half hour, guests from all walks of life. Go check out the What Are You Made Of podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. But there was so much that you just said in your story that obviously faith is something that binds us together. I have always said since I started this show that the one big thing is not a Christian podcast, but I do have many guests that have similar backgrounds to myself. So I want to give them the expression and the ability to share what they've learned. What I think, though, is amazing that even though that is the foundation of who you are, So you go back to your story, the abuse, the broken families, there was brokenness, but there was beauty in the midst of that in your mom who shared with you something that's intangible, which is a relationship with Jesus. That was probably in the middle of that brokenness, the single greatest seed that was planted in your life that has now made you the man that you are today. Doesn't mean that you didn't make mistakes over the year, the chasing women, the partying. That's a human. We're trying to figure this thing out. But that single seed of beauty that was planted in the middle of brokenness, I wonder how many people are struggling to see the beauty right now because all they see is broken things all around them. Those cracks all around you is what allows light to come in, right? If everything is so solid, light can't penetrate it. And it's many times I've experienced in my life, the broken down moments are the places that I've become most in touch with following Jesus because he's loved me when no one else has. So the fact that you and I have that together, and then what you talked about, seeing beauty in nature, seeing beauty in people, no one would blame you, Mikey, for having a dimly lit view of life because of what you experienced as a kid. If there was ever a time to raise your hand and say, like, man, you got every opportunity that you want to feel bad, to be negative because of what you went through, that's what the world tries to teach us, right? Is victimhood without calling it that. And you've never allowed that in what I've experienced with you to ever become your MO. It's, hey, let's address what's happened to us. Let's punch it in the face. Let's heal. Let's have counseling. Let's have prayer. Let's get through it. But then how do we use that to be the rocket fuel that you talked about? And what I love about that one is that you've had the experience now with your faith on your show. You don't have Christians on every episode. You know, obviously, the episode that I special guested with you, we talked about what we're talking about today, our faith in Jesus. But I've had people that would be more considered secular. Maybe they don't have faith as a part of their life or in some degree like we do, but you've never said, hey, you can't come on my show because I think you are like me. There is something to all of our experiences that we can learn from, whether we believe the same things. And humans are incredible. So what you've been able to do with that one, and that's the whole vision from what I see behind it. When you are a content creator, you look back over the last 4 or 5 years when you started this journey. So you were doing mortgages up and down, you know, what you had talked about, and you knew before you ever did 1,000 episodes, you had to do one, right? You had to start somewhere. And when you put yourself out there, when God gives you a vision for your life that you are special, but not special from the sense of you're better than anybody, but the fact that he found you so incredibly worthy to put DNA inside your stream that makes you who you are and get put life in your, you know, breath into your life. You are special because you were created on purpose. But that doesn't mean that you're better than anybody else. It's just that you know that there's something that you are supposed to do with this life while we have it. You've been able to do that. So before you ever did that first episode, you had a vision and you stepped out and did it. And that one is all about reaching that one person. When you create content, though, it can be a very lonely road, especially as you're trying to get things in motion. The chasing. It's not easy to become an attractor, but sometimes you got to be your own best champion, your own best cheerleader. And I know sometimes I'm like, man, should I share that video? I feel like I'm sharing too much. Like, should I promote that thing? Should I do that thing? Like, are people getting annoyed with me? But at the end of the day, if I remember, man, if I post this video and it reaches just one person and changes their life, then I don't care what anybody else thinks. Because you and I, we're not having a podcast where we're selling something, a product, a good, or it's stories, it's people, it's life. So you should never be ashamed that if God has put on your heart to champion other people, to tell people stories, to be a content creator, to be a social media influencer, to run a business in a way that you create the culture that you talked about, don't ever be afraid for going too far. Don't ever feel afraid for loving people more than you feel like you should. Because I think you've experienced, as I have, over 1,000 podcasts that you've been on and over 700 episodes of your show. I got to imagine there were some very cool moments that you would have never thought you would have ever experienced that only happened because you put yourself out there. So do you could you speak to or encourage maybe somebody who is in kind of a broken season right now, needs a little bit of a spark? I mean, what was that journey like going from being in mortgages and kind of not doing a 180, but going the route of podcasting? Like, what was that experience like for you now looking back? And was there anything that maybe you would have changed about how you went doing it, or has it just kind of unfolded the way that it was supposed to? Let's take a quick break to hear a word from your sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Seed Planning Group. If you're looking for a life-giving experience working with a financial planner, then Seed is here for you. Seed is a fee-only financial planning firm with a fiduciary obligation to put your best interests first. If your goal is financial freedom and independence without sales, products, or really glorified salespeople, then check out Seed Planning Group today. You can visit www.seedpg.com. That's www.seedpg.com. And the best part, you can schedule a free consultation to find out if their fee-only planners and their process are right for you.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to just point one thing out. You said that, you find it a lot of times when you're in the darkest spot that you get closest or you can talk to Jesus clear or have a better relationship. But, a lot of people, when things start to work out for them and they get their prayers answered, they forget about Jesus.
Yep.
They forget about the fact that that's the person that you went to ask and pray. And we have this short-term memory loss.
Yep.
So one of the things I've really focused on is when things are going and I'm feeling great and I'm seeing results and I'm encouraged, I remember where it came from. It's not happenstance. It's not coincidence. It's something that has really made a difference in my life. So just wanted to speak to that. Secondly, when people are in a dark time, if you're listening to this show right now and you're in a tough time, dark time, whatever the case is, this is something that's made a difference in my life, and that is suffering well. Like, who are we to think that we shouldn't suffer a little bit?
Right.
Or even a lot? Like a couple things. Number one, and I'm not trying to make this show about Jesus, but look, I'm convicted and I have a belief that I'm committed to. So it has to be wrapped up. And when I have something to talk about, it's got to be this. We saw our Savior hung on a cross, tortured, right? Persecuted. And yet he still won.
Yep.
Right. And so like, who are we to think that we shouldn't go through that we shouldn't experience any of this stuff? So here's the thing. I really think, and I know it might be hard for people to hear this, but I think that we need to figure out a way to embrace the difficulties, enjoy the difficulties. Like it might be, that might sound like kind of freaky and crazy, but enjoy it, lean into it. And when you think about this, all energy, everything is energy. All energy can be converted into what you want it to be converted into. So if you're going through this tough time, take this energy and use it. You can take this energy of a bad time and depressed and heavy feeling and use it to carry you deeper into that hole. Or you can use it and gather it to refocus and then put your attention on something else. And I have a formula, Steve, about this. This is powerful. I don't care where you are in life. If you are very clear about what you want in life, what you want to happen, that's an intention.
Yep.
And when you have an intention, you commit to that intention and you make a decision. Okay, this is the first step in having a great life, the life you want, causing and creating your life. I'm an expert at causing and creating futures with people. And the fact of the matter is, when you have an intention and you commit to it, to make the decision to commit to it, all of a sudden, the way God made us is that your attention focuses on everything to get you to that direction. Then from there, your attention validates the things that you're seeing or hearing or smelling or sensing or perceiving. And that creates existence. So the way God made us is to be able to cause and create things.
Yep.
And so it happens with intention, decision, and commitment to the intention, attention, validation of the things you're seeing for those things, and then creation. I'll give you a point. Like I can tell you right now that, have you driven today, or have you been outside your house today?
Yep.
Let's talk about today. How many red cars did you see the whole time you were out?
It's early. One?
All right, how sure are you?
Not too sure, but.
Right. But you remember one, right?
Yep.
But if I were to say, look, I'll give you $1 million if you could be exactly right. But if you're wrong, right? If you're wrong, I got to take your life.
Yeah.
But you can tell me that you're not sure and nothing happens.
Right.
Would you give me a guess?
Of how many?
Yeah. Would you give me a guess if I took your life if you were wrong?
No.
Right. Okay. So then today, I'm going to have a talk with you. And then tomorrow, okay? Tomorrow, I want you to see and count every red car. And if you can get within the nearest 5, I'm going to give you $1 million. Do you think you can come with that and get in within the nearest 5?
Call you in the morning, right?
Right. And you would, because you have intention.
Yep.
And that's going to make your attention pay attention to that specific thing. So here's what we do. Whatever you want in your life, you write it down. There's a reason people say, write your goals down, write them down, write them down. When you write them down, you're going through making sure that you're setting your intention, you're committed and deciding and setting the attention direction, right? Like you're giving your attention direction. And once you do that, it's on. And I can't tell you how many times that this has happened for me. Like I've wrote things down. Look, I'm watching the news, right? I'm watching the news of what's happening. Tucker Carlson gets fired from Fox. I'm watching RFK Jr. come into the presidential race. I'm watching the news. I watch the news occasionally. I don't get caught up in it though, but I watch it, see what's going on. And I see what Tucker Carlson does after that, and he starts his own network. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy. So then I go to Vegas for a speaking event. I'm speaking on stage, and guess who else is booked for that event?
Big Tuck?
Tucker Carlson, RFK Jr., many others.
Wow.
But the thing is, and this came from podcasting, by the way. I podcast. I met a guy, had him on my show. It was his first ever time coming on a show. I taught him about how the importance of podcasting is. He started his own show now. He's a billionaire now. Okay. I'm not saying I'm a part of him being a billionaire, but I guess I could say that. But he has his own show now. He's been on some of the greatest shows. And he had an event in Vegas. And I spoke at it 2 times. And this time I'm in a green room waiting to speak. And I hear this voice I recognize. And I turn around, it's Tucker Carlson. And I was like, and he was dressed in his blue jacket with khaki, just his hair just like it is. I was like, holy cow, this is crazy. But I cause and create things because I said I want to be around people that are making an impact. Whether you like them politically or not, whatever, doesn't matter. That's up to you. But people that are making an impact, that are getting known, that become a celebrity in their space for impact. And RFK Jr. comes in next. And he's running for president. He left the Democratic Party and running as an independent and believes that he has a chance. And he's in the room with me. And I would have never, these are the things I would have never guessed before that could ever happen. I've met some of the most amazing people. I'm friends with the most amazing people in Hollywood. Now, I know people don't like Hollywood and all that, but I met some amazing people in Hollywood that are doing amazing things, have created shows that I used to watch growing up. And I just, all these things are happening. It's just amazing. I'm going to hang out with John Daly and C-Roc next week in Nashville. I mean, I'm living a dream right now. And here's the thing though, I'll finish on this part. When things happen, when you actually have created those things, thanks to God's gift that he's given us, the most important thing I can tell you is not to say, wow, this is crazy. I can't believe this.
Yeah.
Because what that's doing is committing and confirming your belief in chance, coincidence, and luck. When you really should say, number 1, thank you, Lord. And number 2, of course that happened. Of course that happened. This is the way it works. You shouldn't have a short-term memory of the fact that you were involved in causing and creating this outcome.
Wow. A lot to go through right there. One line that you said, giving your attention direction. I mean, I think that's incredible, the people that you've been introduced to. And it probably wasn't, Mikey, 5 years ago when you set out on this journey that you had Tucker Carlson's name circled in a journal. And you were like, I'm going to know I made it when I met Tucker Carlson. But I think what you did is you had a vision for your life. And what's very cool is when you give, your attention direction, it puts you in the path to meet people like that. That's not the end all be all. But I think all of a sudden, if you're anything like me, you go through seasons where you have breakthrough, God does something incredible, and you forget to acknowledge him. You learn from that. The Holy Spirit gently reminds you, did you give me thanks for that? I am now a Mikey C-Roc, right? You might be my Tucker Carlson in this season of life, where I would have never assumed I would have interviewed somebody of your caliber that I respect. But when I get done with this interview, just like I do with everybody else, the first thing I do is I pray. When that camera light goes off and I stop recording, I sit there and I just say, thank you, Jesus. Like, thank you for giving me the ability to interview so and so. How incredible. Because if I don't do that, my heart will begin to wander, and I will begin to wonder, like, when are you going to do the next thing? Like, when are you going to see me? So doing that simple thing of, like you just said, giving thanks in all things, like, that makes us consciously aware. But when you give your life, your attention, direction, I wonder how many people are out there just living. They're not living on purpose. They're just living. Like, if you think about their prototypical day, they wake up maybe with or without an alarm. Maybe kids bust in the room to wake them up. Their day starts. They do the same thing every day. They get ready for work. They go off to a job that may not make them feel fully alive, but it pays the bills. They come home, say hello to their spouse. They go to a sporting event. They have whatever they do at night, and then they go to bed. There's nothing wrong with that. But I wonder how many people are getting stuck feeling the mundane isn't exciting. And they want passion. They want purpose. They want to feel like they're making a difference. If that's you, I want to challenge you with two things. If you got children, that is the greatest single environment that you can shape people in. Because like Mikey said, he didn't have that growing up. If you got kids at home, do not view them as a burden. Do not view them as sucking the life out of you. Change that perspective and love your kids, understanding the long-term legacy that if you love your kids the right way and you model for them what life looks like as a man, as a woman, as a husband, as a wife, as a marriage, you could completely shape culture that you may not even see on this side of eternity. Like with my 4 kids, if I get this right with my 4 kids, they are going to be greater than me. And if they marry spouses that I've taught them to look for, those two together will do incredible things. And as they have children, and you may look back 3-4 generations from now and be like, look at what this lineage of people did. It has to start with the decision. But what I think is very amazing about your story and the analogy I can think of so God speaks to me through like kind of picture analogies. When my wife and I set out on a trip, what's the first thing you do when you get in your car? You GPS where you're going. Whether you're driving to Florida, whether you're driving to New York, roads you've never been on, you have to put into your Apple Maps or your Google Maps, like, where are you trying to go? That computer will give you suggestions. Sometimes there's one route, sometimes there's 2 routes, sometimes there's 3 routes. But you know that if you follow any one of those 3 routes, those paths, you are going to get to where you are. The experience as you take them will be very different depending on the type of scenery, if you're avoiding highways, but it will get you to where you're going. There's not many of us that when we're driving down the highway following the blue line decide to veer off to the very next exit just because we want to do it. You know, you stay on the path because you have a vision for where you're going. I wonder though in life how many of us have no idea where we're going. We are in a car, we are in this thing called life ready to go. But if you ask most people today, if you and I could interview 1,000 people and say, hey, where are you headed in life? What are you working on? They'd be like, I mean, I don't know. What do you mean? What am I working on? It's like, well, what's the big plan? I, I don't have a big plan. And it's like, why? Like, have you really asked the Lord, like, there's more than just what you're doing right now that you're supposed to do. And it may not be being in the back room with, Tucker Carlson and speaking in Vegas. Mikey, that's your story. But if you're a listener of this show, do not alienate yourself from Mikey because you're not hanging out with Kid Rock next week. Like, don't eliminate your purpose because you hear somebody else doing something that sounds awesome. But I just wonder how you and I could encourage the individual, the couple that's in that season of life right now where there is zero GPS direction going on. They don't know whether they're supposed to turn, head straight, go backwards. And they're just feeling like maybe you're on this podcast, which I would assume most people come on podcasts because you want to get something from it that can help you. Like, how would you, with everything you've learned, Mikey, you were talking about giving your attention direction. That framework that you just provided is incredible. But how can we encourage the person who just feels directionless right now in life? You know? Hey everyone, Steve Campbell. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If it's made an impact on you, I would love to take a moment to ask you to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. But I would also love for you to leave a 5-star rating and review. Your ratings and review help other listeners know that this show is worth their time. So thank you so much for tuning into The One Big Thing, and let's enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yeah, well, first of all, this will wake everybody up here, okay? This is a very important understanding. Nobody lives off of purpose with no purpose. Nobody lives without purpose. Nobody lives without a direction, okay? It's just a matter of what the purpose is and what's the direction. And the fact of the matter is, if you don't set it yourself, somebody will set it for you.
That'll preach.
And you will live off of someone else's goals, someone else's purpose, because you'll become part of their plan. Now, there's nothing wrong with becoming part of a plan if it aligns with your plan, but there is something wrong with living on somebody else's plan and you're just a tag along. You're like a barnacle on the side of a ship going to a Caribbean island, and you're just a barnacle, right? And if that's so here's the thing: you either cause and create your life, or somebody else is going to cause and create it for you. And most of the time, right now, it's the media and those in power and the corporations that are pushing out all these commercials and different products and everything else, and it's sucking you right up into it. And so when I realized that I'm either the puppet or the puppet master, okay, when it comes to living here on earth, I'm like, I don't want to be a puppet. I want to be a cause. You're either cause or effect. I want to be a cause. I want to cause things to happen. I don't want to be the effect of other people. And the other thing is, I found out this in life, and you mentioned something about like having me on, and it's an honor, and the fact that you look at me as that way, I mean, I appreciate that. But when you meet me, I'm just a normal dude, man. And I'm just the difference between me and a lot of other people, though, is that I believe I have the right to do what I'm doing and be who I am.
I love that.
We only have, and Steve, like this is you start hanging out with me, man. You're gonna believe that you have the right to a lot more. I can tell you that. I just have this ability to elevate people's belief in themselves and in a higher power. And here's the thing. So when you believe you have the right to something, that's what you get. Okay. And most people don't believe they have the right to things. And when you, or they think they need a license from somebody. Like in the mortgage business, we used to have to get a license to do mortgages. There's ways to do mortgages without licenses, really, and legally. But there's ways to do it, ways not to do it. But people think they need to have a license, or they have to have they don't have the right to something. Well, let me tell you something. If you believe that you have the right to anything in the world, you can figure out a way to get it.
Yep.
And the thing is, it comes down again to commitment. So when you believe you have the right to something, that's setting an intention, and you have the commitment, and you're making that decision. I'm going to get this. You start paying attention to ways to do it. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. We need to expand our minds more. Anything, and when I say anything, anything is possible. Okay. And when we find out this anything is possible thing is real, our attention starts going to those possibilities, and then we take advantage of those things. We create existence. I mean, like if you don't think things possible, back in the day, they never would have thought that we could be on a video call here. I could be on a video call with you on my phone. AI, there's technology right now that a lot of people think are UFOs and aliens. It's not. It's a technology that's been created that I'm familiar with because I have connections inside that said that this technology you would never, ever imagine that this is possible. That could create a way that energy is infinite. It would put all the oil companies, coal, all that stuff out. Nuclear power, we didn't even do nuclear power. But that reason that it's being held back is because of the fact that there's a money involved. And so there's things that can move faster than you can imagine, that can bend time. Like, for example, here, I'm going to show you something. This is something I want to just expand people's mind here with this. So I don't know if I have a piece of paper here or not. Let me see.
Hey, and while you do this, just want to remind you guys that you can watch this with us. So you can listen as a podcast, or you can head over to our YouTube channel at NQR Media and watch what Mikey is going to be demonstrating. So go right ahead, brother.
All right, I'm going to explain as I'm doing it, though. I got a piece of paper, and at the bottom of the paper in the middle, I'm going to make a big dot. And at the top of the paper in the middle, I'm going to make a big dot. Okay, I'm going to show you guys something that's actually possible now, okay? So I study quantum physics and quantum resonance. And so if you can think about this now, I'm holding up a piece of paper and there's a dot on each side, right?
Yep.
And most people think now what's possible is to travel. You'd have to go from one line to the other like this. This paper represents time, okay? And you have to go across here to get to that dot. or you can fly if you want to, whatever the case is, to that dot from the top of the page to the bottom of the page, or you can do it like this. But what's possible now in quantum entanglement, okay, is to be able to bend time so that you can go from this dot to this dot. Okay, so imagine if you could do that, how fast that happens, because time's not an issue anymore. Boom. So you can go from one point to the other without. This is what is being discovered, developed, and evolving right, not before our eyes, but behind our backs. Okay. So when we have a Navy pilot that's out there that sees an orb that's moving faster than they can even imagine, and it hits the water, right? And it goes to the water and like without even slowing down, this technology out there could change the planet forever. Nobody would ever have, we wouldn't have poverty, hunger, none of that with this technology. Okay. So this is what's happening. So if this is happening, why do we think that we're limited as individuals with what we can accomplish besides just the way we think in our belief system?
Yeah, and there's just still, Mike, what you're talking about today, you're either cause or you're effect. That'll preach to somebody today. Because if you honestly look at your life, are you just following the guidance of other people, or are you manifesting the life that you truly believe is for you and your family? And maybe it's more of a hard issue or the delicate balance between, there's a lot of people out there forging a path for themselves, but they're doing it with all the wrong way. You watch what they're making as far as videos or the way they carry themselves, and you cringe because you're like, but I don't want to be like that person. They don't seem inviting. They don't seem genuine. They don't seem authentic. Don't allow that to skew the fact that then everybody that does this is that way, because there are real people out there. And I think, we've talked about it on my show before. The internet is winning right now with how much information is out there today about how to be your best self. You can open an Instagram reel and watch, fitness instructors, bakers, fooders, dietitians, influencers showing you how to make money on this, that, and the other. But I think what you're talking about is, if you don't even know what you're working towards or giving that, your attention direction, then you are literally just going to swipe away until you find something that makes you feel good. Versus I could guarantee you, because you keep a calendar, if I came to you and said, Mikey, I got a big idea. I want to do X, Y, and Z. I need you to be here. I would like you to do this. You would politely say, Steve, I can't. And it may not be because you don't want to, but it doesn't fit the plan of what you're working on. That doesn't make you a jerk. It's just, what you have and where you're going. So if somebody comes to your life right now, and I think maybe that's what people are missing, they don't have that direction as to where they're going in life. So every new influence is influencing and changing the course of where they should go. They're not able to say, hey, that doesn't fit the season of life for me. Not in a way that makes you be, like I said, a jerk or alienate yourself. But there will always, especially as you put yourself out there will be people that will introduce ideas to you, thoughts, ways of doing things, services, business models. When you own a business, you've probably experienced this like I have. Since I put myself out there podcasting, I am inundated with emails from individuals that I don't know if they're real. I don't know if they're bots, telling me how they're going to improve my videos and reach more people and do all of this stuff. If I was not secure in, hey, I'm not interested in that because I know what I'm building and I want it to be authentic. I do not want to manipulate numbers to show people that I mean business. I just want to make really good content that speaks to my heart, and I think people will find it. I wonder how many of us are responding to things we should never respond to because we're not confident of the course that we're creating for our life. And so if there are things in the media that are influencing you, in your school system with your kids, in the communities that you live, along your party lines, the way you vote, if you don't know what you stand for, and you don't know your own values and what makes you you and the path that you're forging, then every single one of those influences are going to influencing the way you think. And there are so many people that are changing their direction, changing their course, changing their mindset. There will always be more information that's introduced to you that's new. But I think we struggle with a filtering system that says, is this feeding the fuel that I need to go to where I am? If it is, consume it all day long. If I'm not sure what Mikey just said to me, and I don't know how it aligns with my life, but it's not evil, it's not wrong, I'm going to put it on that shelf because I may need it at another time. And if you bring something to me that just completely does not align with what I'm doing, then it's garbage. And there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that's garbage. But there are just so many people out there today that don't know where they're headed, what they're doing, what is all this leading to in their careers, as parents, as individuals, as sons, as daughters, and they're struggling. So my hope with this show is the amount of truth bombs that you've dropped today, cause and effect, giving direction to your attention, manifesting the future that you believe in, believing that all things are possible. I mean, I think if you can take these things and begin to really start to understand, okay, maybe this is the exact episode God wanted you to hear today to get your butt going, right? You're now, when you hear this episode, 6 months into 2024. How are we doing so far? Was 2023 the year of grinding and stretching and pulling? And you said 2024, that calendar year, when it turns, this will be the best year of my life. What if you've been punched upside and down by life and things beyond your control leading up to this episode? And you're like, man, I didn't think it was going to be this hard. What I've heard from guests all along as I've recorded is hard is not bad. Hard can be good, because hard might mean that you're on the right path. So, Mikey, as we kind of bring this episode to a close here, is there kind of any last words, or maybe this is where I was going to go earlier. You've developed, I think when you set out, you had these mindsets. You are with that one helping now teach and manifest these individuals to claiming the life that's in front of them and casting that. But I got to imagine that it's not done in one phone call and one interaction, that somebody goes from years of thinking one way, you come in and you speak truth and you speak life and, hey, we're going to do this. And they just like get it. And they're like, awesome, I'm going to go do that. I'm sure that there is training, there's discipline, there's discipleship, almost in a way, mentorship. It's probably multiple calls of meeting with people to unwind years of thinking, or, starting to manifest that anything is possible. When you've dealt with people that, maybe it takes a little bit of time to get going, is there anything practically that you've taught them or worked with them, or mental reps or anything that gets somebody? Because I think what we all do as humans is, once we experience, holy crap, I can do this, this is real, that serotonin, that energy, that joy that you feel motivates the heck out of you. When you lose weight, when you do that thing, you're like, I can do this. But the distance between I can't do anything in that first win can sometimes be a really long road. So like, how do you get people, when you work with them, to the point of like, Mikey, I love what you're doing, but it's not for me, versus like, wow, I can actually do this? What does some of that unwinding look like?
All right. First of all, totally get that. Couple things here. Number one, I always try to be an example. I provide an example of what's possible. So
Yeah.
I share my story, where I came from, what I've experienced, vulnerability, transparency. That's important because that provides a testimony.
Yep.
Number two, doing things on a gradual level, gradual scale, gradient scale. Like, you heard of the reason that one get 1% better every day. They talk about that a lot, because what happens is if you do things on a gradient scale, you will accomplish way more in the long run than you will if you try to jump forward and do something huge right away.
Yep.
You just got to ease your way in. And it's the same thing with me instructing people or coaching people or advising people. It's got to be done on a gradient scale. It's just like, if I were to tell somebody to do, okay, let me give you an example. I'm going to do 19 podcasts this week. Okay, 19 in a week. All right. Most people do one a week. If they do podcasts, they do one a week maybe.
Yep.
I'm going to do 19 this week. All right. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I've built up to that. And the reason I'm able to do that is I'm built up to that. And there's a purpose behind doing 19 this week. All right. Last week I did 12. Okay. I didn't get to over 1,000 podcasts, 700 my own show, by doing things slow and little at a time. I started out that way. Okay. I did one. That's what I'm talking about here. But I built up to this point where it's like shoot, this is what I do. Like, this is not a problem. And so when I work with someone in podcast world, that one agency, for example, I always tell people that they need to be doing at least a podcast a week. Podcast a week. Now, if I was doing a podcast a week, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. Okay. I can't even make sense of only doing a podcast a week. All right. But I'm not going to tell everybody else to do what I'm doing right now. I tell them one a week. Once they start doing that one a week and they starts building up, then they start saying, oh, I can do more. And you start to expand capacity. So you expand capacity by doing a little bit at a time. And you can imagine a balloon. If you just took an air compressor and blew it in a balloon and on high speed, as fast as possible, that balloon would pop so fast. But if you slowly blow the balloon up, it expands the capacity of the balloon and stretches the rubber out. But if you were to just blast it as fast as it possibly air could go into the balloon, it's not going to be able to keep up.
Right.
So gradient scale, that's the other thing. Be an example, gradient scale, and then hold people accountable. And I can't hold people accountable if I can't hold myself accountable. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna be willing to do that. So we starts with ourselves, hold ourselves accountable. That goes into the example that you're leading, but you're holding yourself accountable so that you're able to hold others accountable. And then finally knowing what you want, you need to be able to write down what you want in a perfect light. Like if I was a genie and I came out of a bottle and I said, I can give you anything you want. What is it? Everybody would be able to tell people what they want at that point. Okay. But they don't do this because they think that it's not possible. That's why they're so afraid to come up with and commit to an idea because they don't think it's possible for them. And they also number two, think that they do this, then it's set in stone and they can't change their mind. We also have permission. We have the right to change our mind whenever we want to. Okay. It's not quitting when you change your mind. It's not. And if it is quitting, it's good because you changed your mind. Now, when you write something down, then from there, you take your thoughts, words, actions, and behaviors, and then the people that are around you in your environment, this is one of the most important parts, and you make sure that they're going towards the mission. If they're not, they're a liability, and you get rid of liabilities. Liabilities cost you. They take away from you. Assets build. So if you're thinking something and you're analyzing your thoughts and the thoughts that you're having are liabilities and they're taken away from your mission, you get rid of them. You replace them with asset thoughts. Your words, what you're speaking, same thing. If the words that you're speaking, the way you're talking to people is a liability, stop doing it. And then same thing with your actions and same thing with your environment. If you got people in your environment, friends, family, coworkers, whatever the case is, this is imperative. I don't care if they're your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. If you let them get away with going against your mission, taking your dream and mission from you, they're stealing from you. And if you're okay with that, stick around them. But if I'm just never okay with anybody, I don't care who it is, my wife, my kids, anybody, taken away from the dreams that I have as an individual, when my dreams involve them. And I make sure, obviously, those relationships, they align. But that's the key, man. That's the key. And, I just want people to understand that they are unstoppable to living the life of their dreams.
You said it here in this episode. I mean, there's so many practical truths, but I would also just encourage people listening, don't skip the process. I think like you talked about that gradient scale. If you just tried to go and you've done no podcast to 19 in a week, you are going to burn out. And I think there's a lot of people that are wanting the end results or the stamina that's built from years of doing something very small and building up to it because they're so desperate to have change or experience in their life. Do not skip the process. Through this process over the last 4 or 5 years, I'm sure there was things you set out to do that you learned from that didn't go the way that you wanted to. And all those experiences then said, okay, this is how I got to get better. This is how I got to do more. And so I just don't want people out there that if you're tired of kind of where you are or you're believing for change, to go try to replicate what a Mikey's doing or a business owner's doing because you believe that's what you need to do. It's start small, build that gradient scale, write that mission and vision down, like you said, begin to retrain your thoughts, and then don't skip the process. You have to learn how to do things yourself so that you can become better and stronger and more resilient to know what you have the capacity to do. So don't be afraid of those small beginnings. If you are new to the One Big Thing podcast, one of the fun ways that I close this episode, and I told Mikey, so he's going to have to think light on his feet here, is I do this little exercise called start, stop, and continue. I think it's a great way for guests to be honest about one thing that they want to start doing, one thing that they know they definitely want to stop doing in their life, and maybe one thing that they want to continue doing because it's working well. So, Mikey, as we bring this to a close, is there, and you can take them whatever order that you want. Just let us know whatever the action is: start, stop, continue, and then fill in the blank. So take it away with any thoughts you might have.
Yeah, I think continue. I'll start with continue. My mission is so clear. I want to continue on my mission.
Yep.
And what I want to start doing is I want to push harder. I want to like just take it up to the next level. Always be like settling, not settling for where I am and the effort that I'm putting forward. I'm obviously, if I can achieve what I'm achieving on a daily basis right now, I can achieve that. So let's take it up a notch and see
Yep.
how far we can go. So I want to start. What did I say? So yeah, so change. Not I forget. Continue. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Continue my mission. I want to continue that. I want to
Start doing more. Yep.
start taking it up the notch or whatever, and then stop. I think that man, stop. What can I stop right now? I've been doing pretty good with things, man. I'm really oh, I mean, I guess the main thing to stop is like man, I don't know. I'm so focused right now on things. I'm so dialed in. I don't know, man. I don't have an answer for you.
There's nothing that you have to stop doing. I would just say, hey, as the guest of the show, you've given more truth nuggets in this hour that we've spent together that I think can really help change lives. So I would just, don't stop anything that you're doing. Keep being a force that needs to be reckoned with. Keep being a positive light, because there are a lot of broken people out there, whether they are somebody that wears their heart on a sleeve and you can tell right away something's going on in their life, or they look rock solid, but behind the scenes, they feel like a shell of themselves. If you keep doing what you're doing, you will continue to reach that one and keep inspiring people. So, again, for having a 1 year anniversary celebration, I started the podcast with my best friend, my wife, as we talked about the life that we're living right now as marriage and parents, and she's totally out of her comfort zone. So, it's funny how life comes full circle. My first guest kind of didn't want to do it, did a great job. In finishing up 1 year, probably have one of the more influential people that is pumping out podcasts and given a voice. Use my story. I would have never got to you if I didn't start with her, right?
Yep.
It's great for me to have a vision and say, like, I am going to do this by year one. But with every guest, I had to record, I had to be open, I had to listen, and then I had to do a great job that hopefully they'd introduce me to other people. And so that gradient scale we've been building on, I'm now kind of the same way. I feel very comfortable doing multiple podcasts, whether it's my own, the ones I record with Travis and myself, being a guest on other people's show, because those exercises, those reps, those actions that I've been doing are making me understand I can do this, and I can shorten the time, and I can be more succinct, and I can share more. It's not about how long we talk. It's about how impactful we are with the time that we have. And Coach Fulmer said it in an episode a few ago. It's not about counting your pennies, but it's making your pennies count. Life is so short. It's worth living. Mikey, I appreciate you being on the One Big Thing, celebrating this 1 year anniversary. And to those that are here to champion, again, hope it's not your last stop. But as always, we are here to help you move the ball forward, and appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you. Congratulations on your 100 shows, man. You're just getting started, bro. You got a lot more ahead of you.
Appreciate you, man.